Ay Mariam Wapanya Yarushalayim. Stand and face Jerusalem. Shalom, shalom. Okay. Mashiach's Palah, the Lord's Prayer, Matthew 6, verse 9. It's chipping. Abanawa, Shemaiah. Get audio. Mashiach's Palah, the Lord's Prayer, Matthew 6, verse 9. Abanawa, Shabbat Shemayim, Kwadash, Haya, Shamka, Yahweh. Malakwathka, Taba'a, Ratazaka, Haya, Aisha, Ba'arataza, Kawa, Haya, Bashamayam, Natan Lanawa, Lakam, Kal, Yawam, Wasalak Nawa, Kawabath Nawa, Kasalak Nawa, Kawabath Nawa, Wala'a, Tabaya Anawa, Banasayawan, Abal, Hawashai Nawa, Mayan, Rai, Kaya, Laka, Hamalakwath, Waha Allah, Waha Tapa Arath, La'awalamiam, Ba'asham, Amashiach, Yawashai, Tawara, Aman.
The book of St. Matthew, chapter 6, verse 9. After this manner, therefore, pray ye, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth, as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. For if you forgive men their trespasses, your Father will also forgive you. But forgive men not their trespasses, now will our Father forgive your trespasses. Abanayi ha'ubaha shemasak yawashai, thawara thamyad, aman.
Aman. Yashabiam, be seated.
Usually make me sit in if I don't have to.
It's too much. Kan. Shabbat Shalom Yasharala. Shabbat Shalom Yasharala Ba'Shem Mashkawashai. All praises to the Most High, the power of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That the Most High, for another Shabbat day where Israel can come together in holy convocation as per the covenant that he made with our forefathers. All right, we are the Light of Zion, located down here in South Florida, 2937 West Broward Boulevard. Okay, I'm Elder Bishop Lapalal. To my left,
Captain Manzazak.
Kan. For the past several weeks, our esteemed captain has been going over subject matters pertaining to our captivity during a period of time called the Hellenistic period, where the Greeks, along with the collaborative effort of other nations, try to indoctrinate the whole world with their satanic philosophies, and have all nations, including our nation of Israel, disassociate ourselves from the Most High's commandments and follow the doctrines that they went about trying to set up. And through the efforts of valiant men that the Most High raised up, we were able to combat that. We were able to, refute that. We were able to stand up against the wickedness and represent the Most High. Understand? Okay, so we're gonna go. We're gonna continue in that that course. But before do so, let's start off with Colossians 3, verse 17.
The book of Colossians, chapter 3, verse 17. And whatsoever you do in word or deed, do all in the name of the odd one Yahweh Shai, giving thanks to the power and the Father by him.
Right, whatever we do in word or deed, make sure it's consistent with the Most High's laws, statutes, and commandments, and the teaching of the Mashiach Yahweh Shai. Let me adjust the span right there to make sure. We don't even South Florida, so it gets a little warm from time to time. So let me adjust my fan to get the temperature right. Right, whatever you do in word or deed, make sure everything is consistent with the teachings of the Mashiach Yahweh Shai and the Most High's laws, statutes, and commandments. Like I said earlier, this time of the year, the high holiday coming up for Israel is what the Hanukkah. Okay, which is a rededication of the temple of the Most High, a cleansing of the temple that was polluted by the heathens, particularly the Greeks, Edomites, so-called white folks, and through the efforts of Israel, the Most High or people cleansed the temple and had it rededicated back to him. Okay, we're gonna that era of time was called the Hellenistic period, a period of time when the Greeks came into power. Talking about 333 BC. Alexander the Greek came into rulership. They took over power from the Persians, Persian and Medes. Persian Medes. He himself ruled for 10, 12 years or so. Then after he died, his kingdom was divided in amongst his 4 top generals. Let me see that map up. Let me see the map again. His 4 top generals were given different territories to govern. Understand? They were given different territories to govern, and once they started governing, the ego kicked in. All right, the ego kicked in. So so the 4 top generals were basically started fighting against each other to see who was the top of the 4. Understand? Alexander Empire limits 323 BC. Okay, that's when he died, and his kingdom got divided amongst his 4 top generals. Okay, and one of the at the time after they fought against each other from 323 BC to about 305 BC, and then then for the most part, Antiochus Epiphanes was given. He became one of the most dominant of the 4, and he was the one who went about trying to indoctrinate all nations of the earth, and have them follow the ways of the Greeks and abandon their laws, their commandments, and of Israel in particular, abandon the commandments of the Most High. But the Most High always has a remnant. No matter what, no matter how much or people going off, the Most High always had a remnant of people who are going to stand fast and hold fast to their nationality, their heritage, and the ways of the Most High, and represent the Most High to the fullest, unto death, if possible. And one particular nation was the Hasmoneans. Okay? There was a dynasty of them. We're gonna go to First Maccabees chapter 3. The father started off. He withstood the fight against the Greeks. Then after he died, his sons took over where he left off and resisted the Greeks. So right now we're talking about an era of time like a three or five. The 3 or 5 BC. Right. So actually the Greeks, the Greeks fought. The Greeks had control of the whole territory for a long time. The Maccabees came into power like in 167 BC, around that time. That's when they started resisting against the Greeks. 167 BC, the Hasmoneans. I read on. First Maccabees 3 verse 1. Yeah.
The book of First Maccabees chapter 3 verse 1 in the Red Apocrypha, page 117. First Maccabees chapter 3 verse 1. Then his son Judas, called Maccabeus, rose up in his stead, and all his brethren helped him, and so did all they that held with his father. And they fought with cheerfulness the battle of Israel. So he got his people honor, and put on a breastplate as a giant, and girt his warlike harness about him. And he made battles, protecting the host with his sword. In his acts he was like a lion, and like a lion's whelp, roaring for his prey. For he pursued the wicked, and sought them out, and burnt up those that vexed his people.
Right. So that's the Maccabees and his sons, Judas Maccabee. Right now we're focusing on Judas Maccabees, who followed in the footsteps of his father. It was like a lion, man. He got the respect of his people. They were behind him. They saw how zealous he was for the Most High, and how much he loved the Most High's commandments. Go ahead.
Sirach chapter 30 verse 3. He that teacheth his son grieveth the enemy, and before his friends he shall rejoice of him. Though his father die, yet he is as though he were not dead.
Right, see that? So the father, he taught his sons to fear the Most High, to keep the Most High's commandments. And because and his sons rose up in their father's stead. And what? They grieved the enemies for that. They grieved the enemy. The sons continued in the ways of the father. So it was as if the father hadn't died, because they were on one accord. They were just doing the same thing. I understand. So that's what happened right here. The Hasmoneans and Judas Maccabees following the footsteps of his father, and was what? Resisting the enemies. So the same effort was being made by the son as with the father. Is there more?
For he hath left one behind him that is like himself. While he lived, he saw and rejoiced in him. And when he died, he was not sorrowful. He left behind him an avenger against his enemies.
See that? That's what happened right there. He left behind him an avenger of the enemies. He knew everything was going to be all right when he died. Because what? He raised his sons a certain way, to fear the Most High. to love his people, to represent his people, and to what? Defend them, his nation, against against enemies, in protection of the Most High's commandments and the heritage of his people. Read on.
Oh, that's in order.
Okay, all right. Exactly, good precept. What was that?
Sirach chapter 30.
Okay. Go on.
Want me to go back to First Maccabees chapter 3?
Yeah, go back to First Maccabees.
First Maccabees chapter 3, verse 4. In his acts he was like a lion, and like a lion's whelp, roaring for his prey. For he pursued the wicked, and sought them out, and burnt up those that vexed his people. Wherefore the wicked shrunk for fear of him, and all the workers of iniquity were troubled.
Look at this, though. The wicked wasn't just all the other nations. The wicked was also our own people.
Right.
Because for the other nations to succeed and have roots in our nation, they always have enemy allies of our people, sellouts, traitors. Understand who can be easily bought, bought for a price. So those are the ones who that's because when we're about to fight against the enemy externally, first we have to what? Identify the enemy internally. Because enemies internally are the ones who are in alliance with the external enemy to our detriment. So what? That's what Judas Maccabee did. Identify the wicked amongst our own people, root them out, slaughter them, kill them.
That's right.
That's what we had to do. That's what they had to do. So that way he knows what. Okay, at the end of the day, he only had what? Righteous men, sincere men who fear the Most High in his host, in his army, fighting against enemies. Read on.
First Maccabees chapter 3, verse 6. Wherefore the wicked shrunk for fear
The wicked
of him.
shrunk. You know what? They started hiding themselves. Or they started quieting down. They started cutting back on the wickedness. Because they know that what? Once they've been identified, they're going to be slaughtered. Read on.
Wherefore the wicked shrunk for fear of him, and all the workers of iniquity were troubled, because salvation prospered in his hand.
Because salvation prospered in his hand. Salvation, what is salvation? That is as rulership, governance, dominance. It's prospered in Judas Maccabee's hands. Read on.
Because salvation prospered in his hand. He grieved also many kings.
He grieved also many kings. When he grieved the enemies, that's a good thing. He grieved also many kings. What's I talking about? The other nations. He grieved them. Because all those other nations were down and in one accord with what? With Alexander the Greek. With the Greeks. Which was after Alexander. He grieved them. Because they saw that what? They were not able to accomplish whatever endeavor they had in mind. Because he was standing up for the people. Defending the Most High's laws, statutes, and commandments. Just like we got to grieve the enemies in our time. By not bowing down to the systems and the doctrines of the other nations and the philosophies. But we got to go out and teach valiantly our people the Most High's laws, statutes, and commandments, regardless of the consequences and repercussions. That's the mindset we got to have in these last days. Because Alexander and Antiochus Epiphanes and the Greeks coming down, the Syrians, they try to indoctrinate the whole world, but right now the whole world is indoctrinated and is going through perpetual indoctrination. So we got to grieve them as remnant of the Most High. Because back then, the Hasmoneans, the Maccabees, they were just a remnant. Because most of our people are sold out. So right now in the present time, the ones of us who haven't sold out, we gotta be valiant for the Most High, not necessarily in a military a physical standpoint, but hey, as far as getting the word out, bringing our people back to their heritage, nationality, keeping the commandments. I'll read on.
First Maccabees chapter 3, verse 7. He grieved also many kings and made Jacob glad with his acts. And his memorial is blessed forever.
Right. He made a name for himself perpetually in Israel. Read on.
Verse 8. Moreover, he went through the cities of Judah, destroying the ungodly out of them, and turning away wrath from Israel.
Right. See that? He went through the cities of Judah and what? Destroying the ungodly out of them. And turning away wrath from Israel. What does that mean? By destroying the ungodly out of Israel, he turned away the wrath of the Most High. Right, because if the evil wasn't put away, the Most High would have came through and put away the evil in his own way, which would have been more devastating. Understand? So when Judas Maccabees went through Israel and said, hey, this ain't going down. These are abomination acts ain't going down. And what the wicked shrunk, then the Most High was appeased. The Most High was, okay, all right. I see a little righteousness, so I'm not going to go through and destroy them with the wrath that I had stored up to unleash in them. That's what happened. Read on.
Verse 8. Moreover, he went through the cities of Judah, destroying the ungodly out of them, and turning away wrath from Israel, so that he was renowned unto the utmost part of the earth. And he received unto him such as were ready to perish.
Right. He was renowned unto the utmost part of the earth. His name reverberated throughout all the earth, man. It wasn't just Alexander the Greek, whose name was famous throughout the earth. Judas Maccabees' name was also just as famous. Because other nations whom he vexed, they knew about him. They feared him. They said, oh, this guy's something else. Well, what are we going to do about this Judas Maccabees? He's blocking our effort. We want to have all the nations of this earth under one umbrella, under one world order. And you better believe the so-called New World Order going on today. That's why it says new. Pay attention to the word, New World Order. You know what? What does the word New World Order implies? That there was an old world order. Understand? And what the Most High said, there's nothing new under the sun. So this old concept I've indoctrinated all the nations of the earth under one rulership, one dominance. That's something that they got from way back then. Read on.
So that he was renowned unto the utmost part of the earth, and he received unto him such as were ready to perish.
Right, so he received unto him such as were ready to perish. Men who were ready to represent the Most High and defend the nation to death. That's the ones that they were drawn unto him. Read on.
Verse 9. Salakia, verse 10. Then Apollonius gathered the Gentiles together and a great host out of Samaria to fight against Israel.
Right. And then Apollonius gathered the Gentiles, meaning the nations, together, and a great host out of Samaria to fight against Israel. Remember, there was a lot of heathens in Samaria too, because when the Assyrians had we read about it in 2 Kings chapter 17, when the Assyrians had, took over Samaria and moved the northern tribes over there. They brought heathens. They brought in heathens from all over the world to occupy Samaria. You know what I'm saying? So Apollonius gathered the Gentiles, we know what, the nations together to fight against Israel. You said you had someone, Apollonius?
Yeah, I'm gonna send it to him so you can be able to put it on the screen.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna text him the wording of it.
Oh, okay. Great. I read on, verse 11.
Give me 1 second, please. There you go. I just sent it to you. So you can spell it. You'll be able to spell it. First Maccabees chapter 3 verse 10. Then Apollonius gathered the Gentiles together and a great host out of Samaria to fight against Israel. Which thing when Judas perceived, he went forth to meet him, and so he smote him and slew him. Many also fell down slain, but the rest fled. So, Salakia, sir, can I say something?
No, go ahead.
So, one of the things I had on that, as I just sent to the officer, he's going to be putting on the screen. There's an actual name for this battle that took place, because during this same period of time, this was taking place during the 167 between 167 and 166 BCE. So during this period of time, this is one of Judas Maccabeus, actually one of his historical first battles that he successfully won. Did you find it? Salakia. No, not pictures. Just go into Scroll down. Oh no, it's the way you spelled it in the end. The battle of without the Q. There you go. No, it's there you go. It's like we can continue. And we can continue. He's gonna keep looking for him.
All right. Okay, go on.
First Maccabees chapter 3 verse 10. Then Apollonius gathered the Gentiles together and a great host out of Samaria to fight against Israel. Which thing when Judas perceived, he went forth to meet him, and so he smote him and slew him. Many also fell down slain, but the rest fled. Wherefore Judas took their spoils, and Apollonius' sword also. Therewith he fought all his life long.
Right, so he slew Apollonius to the spoils, and evidently Apollonius had a famous sword. But good for battle. So Judas Maccabees took that sword and it became his weapon of war.
Yeah, that's it.
You got something in it?
Yeah, that's it. It's called the battle of this same battle that he's having with Apollonius. It's called the Battle of Ma'al Levona. The Battle of Ma'al Levona was the first hand-to-hand combat battle fought between Maccabees and the Seleucid Empire in 167 BCE. The Jewish forces were led by Judah Maccabee, and the Seleucid army force was under the command of Apollonius, described by Josephus as the general of the Samaritan forces. Want me to keep reading or you want to continue?
Go ahead.
After the Maccabean revolt started, Judah relocated his guerrilla combat units at the northern part of Samaria. Apollonius was sent with the local Samaritan armies to link up with Seleucid forces from Jerusalem. Maccabee gained the element of surprise by ambushing the enemy army at Wadi Haramia and successfully destroyed the much larger Syrian Greek army, personally killing its commander, and another force was soon sent against Maccabee, which led to the Battle of Beth Horan.
Right, so there was a famous battle right then in 167 BCE, okay, when Apollonius, with reinforcement from other nations like the Samarian armies and all that, came up against Maccabees, came up against Judas Maccabee at the Battle of Ma'alelebona. Understand? And they got. I was saying today they got smoked. And these guys are relentless. That's why the scripture said what? Perpetual hatred for Israel, man.
That's right.
Immediately after they got defeated, what did they do? They sent for another reinforcement. They sent for a much larger Assyrian Greek army to come again against Maccabee. So they're not giving up. They never gave up.
Sir, can I say something? The water, sir. That battle that takes place right after the Battle of Beth Horan. We're gonna read. When we continue forward, you read about the Siron, the prince of the army of Syria. That's the battle that took place right after.
I'll read on. Go back to First Maccabees.
First Maccabees chapter 3, verse 13. Now when Siron, a prince of the army of Syria, heard say that Judas had gathered unto him a multitude and a company of the faithful to go out with him to war, he said, I will get me a name and honor in the kingdom, for I will go fight with Judas and them that are with him, who despise the king's commandment. Want me to read on?
Read on.
So he made him ready to go up, and there with him a mighty host of the ungodly to help him, and to be avenged of the children of Israel.
Right, so Saron, a prince of the army of Syria, he said, okay, it's my turn now to make a name for myself. So he gathered together and a godly men, which was some Israelites, to go to fight against Judas Maccabees. Read.
Can I say something, sir? Thought, sir. When you read first, I was taking time to actually look at that scripture. I thought it was funny because he said I will get me a name and honor in the kingdom, for I will go and fight against Judas, that are with him, against Judas and them that are with him, who despise the king's commandment. Because I was looking at that scripture. It says they despise the king's commandment. So when I went back and I was looking at the king's commandment, the king's commandment was what? Officer Mazamor. What was the king's commandment? See, that's the lesson for tonight. Get in class, you know. Captain Alia, what was the king's commandment?
For everybody to be of one religion and one accord.
But that's the question. When you read that, when it talks about the king's commandment, when it says everyone be in one order and everyone be in one custom and belief, whose belief? That's the question. Right. And you don't see them having no council talking about, let's all get together and see whose belief and what God and what principles is most profitable for everybody. They don't talk about that. They talk about who? Who's the king of who? The what? The king of the Grecians. That's what. So there you got it out. Talking about the Grecians. So they despised the king's commandment because it wasn't about them thinking, coming together and coming up to one conclusion of a custom. It was just everyone submitting to the king's customs, their beliefs. And we already know the Grecians' beliefs. They're homosexuals. They're gay, right? They love adultery. And they love sleeping with animals, right? So that's what they wanted from us. They wanted you to be gay. That's why. Right. Still like a bishop.
Continue. Really. Verse 16.
Verse.
Yeah, 16.
Verse 16. And when he came near to the going up of Beth Horan, Judas went forth to meet him with a small company, who, when they saw the host coming,
the Beth Horan, right? That's bad, right? Right.
Who, when they saw the host coming to meet them, said unto Judas, how shall we be able, being so few, to fight against so great a multitude and so strong, seeing we are ready to faint with fasting all this day?
See that? That's what the Israelites were asking Judas. How can we be against such a large army that the Greeks are bringing against us? Does this remind you of anything in the battle that Israel had before?
Oh, can I say it, sir?
Go ahead.
Oh, Gideon.
Battle of Gideon. How many men was it Gideon?
It's like 300.
300 men. And they made a movie out of that, too. Right. That's where the movie came from. But, of course, he had other characters in it. Others believe that they were just talking about other people. But it was our people. Gideon, man. A lot of the men had volunteered to go with Gideon, but most I saw stipulation that they had to meet to qualify to go to Gideon. Because what? The most I wanted to be known that, hey, I'm the one bringing this victory about. And Judas also in this present time. In that present time. So there's some men who are in tune with the heritage and the nationality and the Holy Spirit know what the Most High did for our people back in the days. And know that the Most High can do the same thing for our people at any present time. In any situation you're in. So Judas recognized that. Read on.
You want me to give you a precept?
Yeah, go ahead.
The book of Sirach, chapter 2, verse 10. Look at the generations of old and see, did ever any trust in the Most High and was confounded? Or did any abide in his fear and was forsaken? Or whom did he ever despise that calleth upon him? For the Most High is full of compassion and mercy, long-suffering, and very pitiful, and forgiveth sins and saveth in time of affliction.
Right. So, whenever you're in a predicament, reflect on how it was back in the days and try to relate to a situation that was similar to yours and see how men or women who call upon the Most High in the time of predicament were delivered from such situations, man. Because what? Things that were written 4 times or what? Written for our learning. And what we got to do what? Search the path of our forefathers, man. All right? Read on. Verse 18.
First Maccabees chapter 3, verse 18. Unto whom Judas answered, it is no hard matter for many to be shut up in the hands of a few. And with the Most High of heaven, it is all one to deliver with a great multitude or a small company.
Right, so the Most High can't get the same result regardless of what size the army is. Whether it's an army or a small army, the Most High can bring out a victory, man. Read on.
For the victory of the battle For the victory of battle standeth not in the multitude of a host, but strength cometh from heaven.
Right. It's not the size of the army that determines the victory. It is source of the strength, which is from heaven, from the Most High. Read on.
Verse 20. They come against us in much pride and iniquity to destroy us, and our wives and children, and to spoil us. But we fight for our lives and our laws.
We fight for our lives and our laws. They're coming to destroy us and impose upon us their doctrines and the philosophies and their ideologies, but we understand facts. What? As laws, statutes, and commandments. You know?
But we fight for our lives and our laws. Wherefore the Most High himself will overthrow them before our face. And as for you, be ye not afraid of them. Now as soon as he had left off speaking, he leapt suddenly upon them. And so Horan and his host was overthrown before him. And they pursued them from the going down of Beth Horan unto the plain, where were slain about 800 men of them. And the residue fled into the land of the Philistines.
Judas made a speech to encourage his men. What did they do? They pounced upon those the Syrians, the Egyptians, the Greeks, which were located in Syria, and killed 800 of them, and the rest fled up in the hills and into Philistine territories. Read.
Verse 24. And they pursued them from the going down of Beth Horan unto the plain, where were slain about 800 men of them. And the residue fled into the land of the Philistines. Then began the fear of Judas and his brethren, and exceeding great dread to fall upon the nations round about them.
Wow. Then began the fear of the nations about them. And then began the fear of Judas and his brethren, and an exceeding great dread to fall upon the nations round about them. So all the nation became fearful of Israel, recognized our militants, our dominants, as valiant men. Good God.
Oh, so I wanted to bring out a source. Because up to this point, this whole time, all these battles, there's a certain number that Judas actually had with his people. That's the reason why they were so afraid when they were going up to the numbers of these Greeks. So this is a book called Baziel Bar Kovac, Judas Maccabees, the Jewish struggle against the Seleucids. So I had highlighted a certain portion of it and said this. The campaigns, it's page 48. The campaigns were conducted with guerrilla methods where numerical strength is not decisive factor. So when it says guerrilla methods, it's basically saying guerrilla warfare, right? Basically hit and run tactics, right? The most that can be said is that the number was no less than 6,000 men, estimate of 2nd Maccabees states for the start of the revolt. Jumping down to, at the same time, there is no doubt that in the clashes themselves, forces smaller than 6,000 men were utilized at Beth Horan and Amasya, where the tactical requirements inherent in setting an ambush and conducting a long night march dictated the participation of only picked units. And it gives a citation of 1 Maccabees chapter 3, verse 16, going onward in the chapter that we're actually reading. It quotes this chapter. Right? It is illuminating that the wake of the first success of the camp gradually grew until evening according to 1 Maccabees, it is reached 10,000 men at Beth Zor, a short time before the purification of the temple. So it's basically saying the number of men that he started with was 6,000, and the tactic that they were using to fight was guerrilla warfare. Basically, I come, I stab you, we fight you, then we run off, and then we ambush you and kill you and finish you off. Right? That's guerrilla warfare.
Right. So and throughout history, we have used that tactics in many of the territories. The Levites used that in Haiti.
Right.
Against the French, against Napoleon and the French. The Benjamins used it in Jamaica, the Maroons, against the British. And we have used that where we're few in numbers, where we outnumbered them. They outnumbered us, rather. They outnumbered us, but we use that tactic. I mean, as warfare, to be victorious over them. Understand? And we were much less organized, much less sophisticated weaponry. They had all the guns and all that. We had a few. Yeah, but even the Gadites, even Gad and the northern, they use that also. And we stood on Esau for a long time in the mountainous terrain, with the bow and arrows and all that. So Israel I've been using that tactical warfare strategy that the Maccabees used back in the days through our different generations of time successfully. Read on.
1 Maccabees chapter 3, verse 25. Then began the fear of Judas and his brethren, and an exceeding great dread to fall upon the nations round about them. And so much as his fame came unto the king, and all nations talked of the battles of Judas. Now when King Antiochus heard these things, he was full of indignation. Wherefore he sent and gathered to Slakia.
Antiochus. If you notice that they give their children their own name. Because Antiochus was one of Alexander's top generals. Antiochus Epiphanes. But this is generation later on. This is like almost 150 years later. This is probably his his great grandson or something. You know what I'm saying? So they give their children their own name to keep their heritage going on also. You can read about that in Psalms 49:11. I read on. Now when King Antiochus. Read on. Read 27 again.
Okay, come on. 1 Maccabees chapter 3, verse 27. Now when King Antiochus heard these things, he was full of indignation, whereof he sent and gathered together all the forces of his realm, even a very strong army. He opened also his treasure and gave his soldiers pay for a year, commanding them to be ready whensoever he should need them.
Right, so Antiochus was so mad, man, when he heard of Judas Maccabees and the Israelites destroyed his people. So he went about gathering an even larger army, and even paid him gave him a whole year's salary in advance. He paid him a whole year's salary in advance. So he said, "Hey, I'm paying you right now. So hey, whenever I want you, don't ask me for money. I already paid you, so just make sure you're available." That's what he was doing. Read on. So he emptied out his treasury to get out this great army to fight against Israel. Read on.
Now when King Antiochus heard these things, he was full of indignation, wherefore he sent and gathered together all the forces of his realm, even a very strong army. He opened also his treasure and gave his soldiers pay for a year, commanding them to be ready whensoever he should need them. Nevertheless, when he saw that the money of his treasure failed, and that the tributes in the country were small because of the dissension and plague which he had brought upon the land in taking away the laws which had been of old time. He feared that he should not be able to bear the charges any longer, nor to have such gifts to give so liberally as he did before, for he had abounded above the kings that were before him. Slakia. I lost my place.
So he was huh? Water? Is he in the way? Yeah, I'm good. Yeah. I know I'm good. Yeah. He was concerned that he was gonna run out of money. He was gonna run out of money. He wasn't gonna be able to pay the soldiers. Yeah, you know cold one. Got a cold one. Got another one. Yeah. He was concerned that he wasn't gonna be able to afford to pay the soldiers. But so what did he do? Read on.
Nevertheless, when he saw that the money of his treasures failed, and that the tributes in the country were small because of the dissension and plague which he had brought upon the land in taking away the laws which he had been of old time, he feared that he should not be able to bear the charges any longer, nor to have such gifts to give so liberally as he did before, for he had abounded above the kings that were before him. Wherefore, being greatly perplexed in his mind, he determined to go into Persia, there to take the tributes of the countries, and to gather much money.
Right. So what did he do? So he's gonna go to Persia now. He's gonna go to other territories to get this bounties and spoils from those nations, to bring back to his treasury in Syria. I understand there's Greek though, but that's territory that he governed over, Syria. So he can sponsor the military to fight against Israel. So this guy would spend what he didn't even have, so he can get what we had. Why wasn't he satisfied with what he had? He said, well, I'm going to spend it just so I can take yours. Read on.
Verse 32. So he left Lysias, a nobleman, and one of the blood of royal, to oversee the affairs of the king from the river of Euphrates unto the borders of Egypt.
Let me see the map now. Okay, it's up there. From Euphrates, where Euphrates to the map, to the borders of Egypt. So, see the borders of Egypt is right there. But telling me that's it. Yeah. What's the Euphrates?
Right there. It's in the borderline of the orange and the gray in the middle.
Okay. Put it back. See the map. Go back to the other map. Euphrates, right? Euphrates. See that? Come on, put it back. No, you're not gonna zoom in. It's all right. Leave it like that. Euphrates. Okay. It's a border from Euphrates. See what? This is the Syrian desert. From Euphrates to Egypt. It's a territory. All right. St. Lucius, Babylon. Okay. Read on. Read on now.
Verse 32. So left Lysias, a noble man, and one of the blood royal, to oversee the affairs of the king from river Euphrates unto the borders of Egypt. and to bring up his son Antiochus until he came again.
See that? His son was even Antiochus. His son had his whole name. Or was no, okay, no, that was I read on.
Verse 34. Moreover, he delivered unto him the half of his forces and the elephants, and gave him charge of all things that he would have done.
Right, he delivered unto him the half of his forces. What half of his forces that mean? Half of his forces. Talking about the military. And the elephants. What are the elephants? What are the elephants for? Right. Who's famous for using elephants in huh? Right. Who's famous for using elephants as part of the military? Huh? Who's famous for that? Lion part, right? Hannibal.
Hannibal Barca.
Right. That's his name. Yeah.
There was something else about that. Where they got the war elephants from? They got it from them. The Maria. Yeah. They had got the elephants from that empire right there on the right. It says in 305 the Seleucus succeeded the province to Maria for 500 war elephants. That's where they had got it from, the empire.
500 war elephants. Not just regular elephants, but the war elephants. All right, read on.
Moreover, he delivered unto him half of his forces and the elephants, and gave him charge of all things that he would have done, as also concerning them that dwelt in Judah and in Jerusalem, to wit, that he should send an army against them, to destroy and root out the strength of Israel, and the remnant of Jerusalem, and to take away the memorial from that place, and that he should place strangers in all their quarters, and divide their land by lot.
Right, so that was the intention. That when the army invade Israel and destroy us, and remove our memorial. So this is like Psalms 83 are right here. Psalms 83 right here. So, to wit, that he should send an army against them to destroy and root out the strength of Israel and the remnant of Jerusalem, and to take away their memorial from that place. Give me Psalms 83. I got to read that.
Psalms 83?
Yeah.
The book of Psalms, chapter 83, verse 1. Keep not thou silence, O Most High.
Yeah, don't be silent, Most High. Read on.
Hold not thy peace.
Hold not that peace because of what the enemies are doing to us. Read on.
And be not still, O Most High.
Mm-hmm.
For lo, thine enemies make a tumult.
The enemies make a tumult, an uproar, like in gathering an army together. To what? To invade Israel and slaughter Israel. Read on.
And they that hate thee have lifted up thy head.
And they that hate thee, they hate the Most High. That's why. That's why they want to what? Do away with our laws and have what? Our laws replaced with their commandments, the king's commandments. Because they what? They hate the Most High. Read on.
And they that hate thee have lifted up the head.
They're proud. Lifted up their head. They dare to try to put themselves in the place of the Most High, as if we're insignificant, as if the Most High is insignificant. So what David's saying? Hold out your peace, yeah. Read on.
They have taken crafty counsel against thy people,
That's what they and the other nations have done collectively. Read on.
and consulted against thy hidden ones.
Consult against our hidden ones. We are the hidden ones because what? It's a secret to us, especially in the last days, who we are. We are the Hebrew Israelites because of our the conspiracy and the doctrines in our of the other nations. That fact is hidden from us. We are the ones. We're hidden physically, spiritually, and geographically. Because what in many countries, what we are the majority are close to it, but what I was confined to the ghettos and the slums, to the rural areas, while they're in the government and in the cities, acting as if it's all about them. Go ahead, Con. Yeah, when one guy comes to rulership, what do they do? Set an executive order to negate the previous ruler's order. That's what Biden done with Trump. That's what Trump did with Obama. You know what I'm saying? That's what they do. Exactly. Trying to outdo the other one. If they're so perfect, how come are they always trying to put one on one? Okay, this is better than yours. That's better than mine. Yours. That's what I'm saying. Or the Most High said, hey, this is the same law, and every generation should abide by this law. What does Esau and the other nations say? Well, times have changed. Times have changed, so we got to change the laws to adjust times. Time hasn't changed. People change because what? They think they're better than the Most High. They think they coming to they think they're able to so-called build a better mousetrap. I read on. Go back to finish Psalms. Yeah, read Psalms and then go back to the Maccabees.
Keep reading Psalms. Yeah. The book of Psalm chapter 83, verse 4. They have said, "Come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee, the tabernacles of Edom."
Right. So, all right. Go back to Maccabees and read 34 again.
Verse 34.
No, 35. Where are you? 35, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 35.
First Maccabees, First Maccabees chapter 3, verse 35. To wit that he should send an army. To wit that he should send an army against them, to destroy and root out the strength of Israel.
Yeah, that's what it did. To destroy and root out the strength of Israel. What is the strength of Israel? Government. The rulers, the ones what I'm saying, the rulers are the leaders. Our heritage, not to break down morality, to break down everything, break down the family structure. Read on.
To wit that he should send an army against them, to destroy and root out the strength of Israel.
Oh, nationality or heritage or culture, family structure. Read on.
And the remnant of Jerusalem.
And the remnant. They endeavor to destroy the remnant also. You know the remnant is what's left, right? So they endeavor to destroy the remnant also. So when I want to destroy the strength and the remnant, then what does that mean? There's nothing left. So they're coming up with total annihilation of Israel. That's the intention. Spiritually and physically. Read on.
to wit, that he should send an army against them, to destroy and to root out the strength of Israel, and the remnant of Jerusalem, and to take away their memorial from that place.
And to take away the memorial from the place. There's no memory of us. There's no statue, no icons. Of course, I have to do a diligent search. That's why they're endeavoring now. That's why you see the government about whatever statues we had. What do? They disfigure those statues. They mutilate those statues. So there's no remembrance of Israel to see that, hey, we once lived here. We are the Hebrew Israelites. We're the Jews. This is what we look like. We rule these territories. Are we on?
And that he should place strangers in all their quarters and divide their land by lot.
Mm-hmm.
Verse, select it. Let me flip over. That remained and departed from Antioch, his royal city, the 147th year, and having passed the river Euphrates, select it.
Verse again.
I'm in verse 37, the end of it.
Start 37 again.
So the king took half of the forces that remained and departed from Antioch.
Mm-hmm.
His royal city, the 147th year, and having passed the river Euphrates, he went through the high countries. Then Lysias chose Ptolemy, the son of Dormians, and Nicanor and Gorgias, mighty men of the king's friends, and with them he sent 40,000 footmen and 7,000 horsemen.
40,000 footmen and 7,000 horsemen. That's 47,000 men altogether. Read on.
And with them he sent 40,000 footmen and 7,000 horsemen to go into the land of Judah and to destroy it, as the king commanded. And so they went forth with all their power and came and pitched by Emmaus in the plain country. And the merchants of the country, hearing the fame of them, took silver and gold, very much with the servants, and came into the camp to buy the children of Israel for slaves.
See that? So these other nations. The Greeks gathered this great army of 47,000 men to invade Israel. And guess what? The nations went about saying, "Yo, it's on." They were rooting for them. They were encouraging them. See what did they do? What did the other nation run about did? They got their money together. Say, hey, when they capture those Israelites and destroy these cities and root them out and overturn them and destroy the heritage and the memorial, I got a few dollars. Do you mind if I buy a few slaves? That's what they were anticipating. That the Israelites are what we're going to be sold into slavery. So they had the money together, waiting to buy our people for slaves. Read on.
Then, verse 39. And with them he sent 40,000 footmen and 7,000 horsemen to go into the land of Judah and to destroy it. And go into the land of Judah and to destroy it, as the king commanded. And so they went forth with all their power, and came impinged by Emmaus in the plain country, and all the merchants of the flowing game, Slakia, and the merchants of the country, hearing the fame of them, took silver and gold very much with servants, and came into the camp to buy the children of Israel for slaves. A power also of Syria and of the land of the Philistines joined themselves unto them. Now when Judas and his brethren saw that miseries were multiplied, and that the forces did encamp themselves in their borders, for they knew how the king had given commandment to destroy the people and utterly abolish it. Keep going.
Yeah, read on.
They said one to another, let us restore the decayed estate of our people, and let us Want me to keep going?
Yeah, read.
Salakia. Now when Judas and his brethren saw the miseries were multiplied, and that the forces did encamp themselves in their borders, for they knew how the king had given commandment to destroy the people and utterly abolish them, they said one to another, let us restore the decayed estate of our people, and let us fight for our people and the sanctuary.
Right, so Judas Maccabees saw what the other nation had the mind. They were being supported by, you know what I'm saying, the other nation, or the Greeks are being supported by the other nations who come with the money to say what? They're going to buy us as slaves. Judas said on the other hand, Judas as a leader endeavored to say, let us go and clean up the sanctuary. Let us restore the decayed estate of our people, because even the people were in decay. They were in decay, man. They they were all right physically looking, but the mind was so far from the Most High. They were so discouraged, so fainted from the warfare, from the constant attack from the Greeks, in collaboration with the other nations. So Judas was endeavoring to restore their confidence and their pride and self-worth. So I said, and let us fight for our people and the sanctuary. Read on, verse 44.
Then was the congregation gathered together, that they might be ready for battle, and that they might pray and ask mercy and compassion.
Mm-hmm. Read.
Now Jerusalem lay void as a wilderness. There was none of her children that went in or out.
Right, because the city was under siege. So the city was like a wilderness. It was under siege because what? They were constantly surrounded by the enemies. They couldn't go out, and nobody could come in. So it was very difficult for them. Read on.
Now Jerusalem lay void as a wilderness. There was none of her children. It's like, did I jump over something?
Verse 45.
45? I read 44 already?
Yes.
Oh, slacking. Okay. Now Jerusalem lay void as a wilderness. There was none of her children that went in or out. The sanctuary also was trodden down, and the aliens kept the stronghold. The heathen had their habitation in that place, and joy was taken from Jacob. And the pipe with a harp ceased.
So the heathens took over the sanctuary. Understand? It was they had a strong hold in the sanctuary, man. So Jacob was very sad. Even the Israelites were very sad. There was no the voice of mirth was gone. That's what it says. What? And the pipe with his harp ceased. It was a pipe with a harp, just making music. it's very hard to make music to celebrate when you're sad. So all that was taken away from Israel because they saw that the heathens had occupied the sanctuary, and I know our people were struggling. Read on. 46.
Wherefore the Israelites assembled themselves together and came to Mashpah over against Jerusalem. For in Mashpah was the place where they prayed aforetime in Israel. Then they fast that day and put on sackcloth and cast upon his heads and rent their clothes and laid open the book of the law wherein the heathen has sought to paint the images of their images.
Read it again.
I read that second line. Wherein and laid open the book of the law wherein the heathen has sought to paint the likeness of their images.
Right. So what did they do? They fasted. They fasted and prayed. So the congregation got together and said, "Hey, we have to come together on one accord and fast and pray, put on sackcloth, and appeal to the Most High to defend us, and to open the book of the law, when the heathen has sought to paint the likeness of their images." So the heathens were trying to erase Israel's heritage and try to the memorial abandoned, and you know what I mean, and themselves now put in our stead. Read on, verse 49.
And they brought also the priest's garments and the first fruits and the tithes and the Nazarites they stirred up, who had accompanied themselves their days.
Right. So they brought also the priest's garments and the first fruits and the tithes and the Nazarites they stood up, who had accomplished their days. So what does it mean the Nazarites would accomplish their days? No, the Nazarites who had accomplished their days. Right. No. So let me read verse 49 again. They brought also the priest's garments and the first fruits and the tithes and the Nazarites they stirred up. What do you mean the Nazarites they stirred up? They encouraged them. They encouraged them to be in a warlike manner, to be supportive of the cause, to fight against the Greeks. So that's what I mean. They stirred them up. They were kind of laid back, whatever. We should rouse them, Judah. We should rouse them up. Because everybody's just just chilling. Time is serious. There's a war at hand. You have to be in a warlike manner. You have a warlike mindset to defend yourself. And what does he do? And the Nazarite they stirred up, who had accomplished their days. What does it mean, who had accomplished their days? The Nazarite they stirred up, who had accomplished their days. What does that mean?
So once the vow was over, they were able to go to the war.
Exactly, right. Because remember, as a Nazarite, the vow you take is for a certain period of time.
Right.
And if that time is fulfilled, what do? You present yourself to the priest. I say, I say, right. So, but the ones who were actually within their vows, they couldn't go to war, because one stipulation of being a Nazarite is that right, if you come near dead body, and all that. All right. Verse 50. Read on now. Read it out. All right.
I'm at verse 49. I can read it again.
No, sorry. Read 50. Go to 50.
Go straight to 50?
Yeah.
Okay, come on. Verse 50. Then cried they with a loud voice toward heaven, saying, What shall we do with these? And whither shall we carry them away? For thy sanctuary is trodden down and profane. Thy priests are in heaviness and brought low. And lo, the children were. Salakia. How did I read over that?
We're 52
For-
again.
52 again? Salakia. You want me to start from 51?
52.
52. And lo, and the heathen are assembled together against us to destroy us. What things they imagine against us? Thou knowest. How shall we be able to stand against them, except thou, O Most High, be our help? Then sounded they with trumpets, and cried with a loud voice. And after this Judas ordained captains over people, even captains over thousands, and over hundreds, and over fifties, and over tens.
Right, so the people was on one accord. They realized that their help had to come from the Most High because in all cases previously, they were outnumbered. You had 47,000 of these heathens. You only had 6,000 of the Israelites who had to resort to guerrilla warfare and all that. So now they say they have to cry to the Most High. So the sound of the trumpet, the sound of the warlike sound, to stir up the people, including the Nazarites, to be in a warlike mindset, to appeal to the Most High for help. Read on.
Verse 53. How shall we be able to stand against them, except thou, O Most High?
Verse 55.
Verse 55?
Yes.
Come. And after this, Judas ordained captains over the people, even captains over thousands, and over hundreds, and over fifties, and over tens. But as for such as were building houses, or had betrothed wives, or were planting vineyards, or were fearful, those he commanded that they should return, every man to his own house, according to the law.
So you see, was very much in keeping the Most High's commandments. So what did it say? Those who were faithful, those who built houses, those who just got married, those, he said, no, you ain't coming to war. Because your mind is someplace else. You have to be in a warlike manner, and you have to be focused on this war right here. All right, read on. Go ahead.
Captain Alia, when we prepare to go to camp, what scripture do we read?
Deuteronomy 20.
We read Deuteronomy 20. Deuteronomy 20, verse 1 to 8. So when you read this right here, what Judas is doing, this is perfectly according to the law. Because remember when we read Deuteronomy 28 and 1, it says what? Then shall the priests say to the men, and they should tell them what? If you have a house, you haven't lived it, go home. If you have a vineyard, you haven't tasted of it, go home. If you have a wife you haven't dealt with, go home. I mean, if you're fearful, you're a coward, stay home. Right? Because the type of men that they want, the type of men that we need to go out in war is the men who have in their mindset, I'm going to die for my people. I'm going to die for my God and my laws. This is the reason why this law is there, right? Because when you go to war and you haven't dealt with your wife, guess what? When you're at war, the only thing you're thinking about is your woman. When you're at war and you have a vineyard, you have a taste of it, you're thinking about your cousin who's going to inherit it after you die. Right? I mean, at war, right? Because you haven't tasted it of it yet, right? But you know what? When you have tasted of the vineyard and then you go to war, guess what? You're thinking to yourself, I'm not missing anything. Those grapes ain't that sour. They ain't that sweet. But you know what? When I get back from war and I defended my people, I brought spoils for my people, I defended my God, that wine is going to taste a little bit more sweeter. It's going to taste a little bit sweeter. Right.
All right, let's wrap it up.
Salakia. Go ahead.
Let's wrap it up. We have 3 more verses. Verse 57.
Come. The book of 1 Maccabees chapter 3, verse 57. So the camp removed and pitched upon the south side of Emmaus. And Judas said, arm yourselves and be valiant men, and see that ye be in readiness against the morning, that ye may fight with these nations that are assembled together against us, to destroy us and our sanctuary. For it is better for us to die in battle than to behold the calamities of our people and our sanctuary. Nevertheless, as the will of the Most High is in heaven, so let him do.
Right, so Judas encouraged for
Hey.
Be ready to die for your nation. To die for the Most High commandment. Okay? And be one accord, because our endeavor is to what? To assemble together ourselves and to clean the sanctuary that are assembled together against us to destroy us and our sanctuary. For it is better for us to die in battle than to behold the calamities of our people and our sanctuary. Nevertheless, as the will of our power is in heaven, so let him do. So they were ready to put their lives on the line to defend the Most High's laws, statutes, and commandments and heritage, and to restore the temple back to the Most High. So we're going to wrap it up right there so brothers can get time to go to the street teaching, edify our people. The Most High willing, we continue again next week. We're probably going to go into the actual cleansing of the temple. On the actual scriptures are where they're dealing with the actual cleansing of the temple and victory over the Greeks. Bashamash Gabashai. So I'm Madin Wapanya, Yerushalayim, stand and face Jerusalem. I'm Madiam Wapanya, Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. Shayar, Hama Alwath, Ladawad, Hana, Ma, Tawab, Wama, Naayam, Shabbath, Akyam, Gam, Yakar, Kashaman, Atawab, Al, Araash, Yarad, Al, Azakwan, Zakwan, Haaran, Shayarad, Al, Paya, Madawath Yawa, Katal, Karamwan, Shayarad, Al, Araria, Tazayawan, Kaya, Sham, Tazawa, Yahawa, Ath, Abaraka, Kayawam, Aid, Iwalam, Ba'asham, Hamashiach, Yahawashai, Tawara, Aman.
The book of Psalms, chapter 133, verse 1. Behold, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity. It is like the precious ointment upon the head that ran down upon the beard, even Aaron's beard that went down to the skirts of his garments, as the dew of Hermon, and as the dew that descended upon the mountains of Zion. For there Yahweh commanded the blessing, even life forevermore. Bahashem Mashiach Yahweh, Thawada, Thamyad, Aman.
Kan. Tuwara Yashurala. Tuwara Yashurala for Laganim. Don't forget the Most High willing tomorrow, 12 noon Eastern. We have a continuation of the Shabbat services of Chief Minister Shalomar. Kan. Shamash Gavin. And don't forget, coming up, 28th, we're going to have Hanukkah service. Sunday. Kan. Shamash Gavin. Yeah, we provide with additional information going forward, but don't forget it's about 7 p.m. or so. Yeah, sundown. Sunday 28th, Hanukkah service. The actual the celebration of the rededication of the temple back to the Most High. Feast of dedication.